Welcome to Rising Up for Justice, a special weekly series presented by Rising Up with Sonali, an independently produced, subscriber-supported program syndicated to radio stations, free speech TV, and podcast platforms. I'm Sonali Kolhatkar, host and executive producer. Our nation and our world is overrun by billionaires and bigots, but they are few and we are many. On this series, exclusive to subscribers of Rising Up with Sonali and viewers of Free Speech TV, we'll hear from organizers in the movements for social justice and dig into the nuts and bolts of values, strategies, tactics, narratives, and building power. This week, Jane Kim from Working Families Party joins us. Jane is the California director of the Working Families Party. She's a longtime community organizer and progressive policymaker. She previously served as the California political director for Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign and was elected to 2 terms on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Welcome to the program, Jane.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, tell us, for people who may not be familiar with the Working Families Party, right? They've heard of the Democratic Party, they've heard of the Republican Party, maybe even the Green Party. What is the Working Families Party? How do you summarize the work that this organization does, including the main goal that Working Families Party has?
Mm-hmm. So Working Families Party started in the state of New York in 1998, has been around for over 25 years, and we're now in our 4th year in California. And we are serious about winning political majority for the multiracial working class and the many and not the few in government. We believe government should not be viewed as a problem, it should be viewed as a prize. And that we want to win Working Family Party champions from school board to the state legislature.
And so basically getting people elected, but is it a political party as such? Is it a political party in the same way that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party or even the Green Party is?
Yeah, so we are a different formation than what many in the left are used to because we are serious about forming a political party. And in many states, we are a ballot line party. And in states where we are not, we organize like a ballot line party. We recruit and identify candidates that believe that government should represent the many and share our values. And we go through an extensive endorsement process. And after that, we help these candidates run and win office. And then after they win, because winning office alone is not the goal, passing a policy agenda that actually uplifts working Californians is the goal. We work to support our electeds to govern by supporting them on policy and helping them with organizing on the ground. That at least is the goal and the vision for Working Families Party.
Why not just recruit progressives for the Democratic Party? There's been many efforts over the years to push the Democratic Party to the left, to help it really adhere to its ideals. Why not just be a feeder of progressive candidates to the Democratic Party?
Well, in many ways, we are already doing that currently. People always ask, are we organizing within the Democratic Party, or are we running in opposition to the Democratic Party? And the correct answer is that it's both right now, because again, we are serious about winning. And so sometimes we will work within the Democratic Party either to nominate and push more progressive candidates and push the Democratic Party to the left. Sometimes we'll even endorse a mediocre Democratic candidate because we believe that they are still better than the Republican that is running in the general election, and that we are still better off with that Democrat over, for example, a Trump. And then there are cases that we will run a candidate counter to the Democratic Party. So we run all 3 strategies. We do believe, though, that a 2-party system really limits the ability of working Americans to maneuver electorally. It is, of course, an imperfect system, but I don't think that it has been demonstrated to serve working Americans. And that's why WFP exists. We are really trying to break that current system. And, since the Trump election in November, there has been a surge of interest in alternate parties and a multi-system multi-party system in this country, which I think is really exciting. I just don't think a two-party system can really encapsulate the broad array of perspectives on how to govern in this country. And ultimately, it really does limit the ability of working people to develop a powerful agenda in government.
So, how does Working Families Party achieve its goals of getting progressives elected? And it sounds like you adjust your strategy based on circumstance, geography, the particular race in question.
Mm-hmm. So that's right. So in a presidential election cycle, where our options are Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, the Working Families Party ultimately decided through an endorsement process that included steering committee members and our dues-paying members that working people were still better off with Kamala Harris over a Donald Trump. But in multiple races, largely in school board, city council, state legislature, we can be more unapologetic in our positions that we demand from our candidates. And in fact, we have found many candidates who have been able to run on a platform that is aligned with governing for the many and not the billionaires. And in just 3 years in California, for example, Working Families Party has now elected over 100 candidates to office from school board to state legislature. And one of the things that we provide, because our candidates are always outspent by the other side, always outspent, is that we provide tools either at a free or a low cost value that helps our candidates develop mailers and digital ads, PDI and VAN. These are voter targeting systems that candidates use. We will also help support candidates around developing win goals and field numbers and be a part of their kitchen cabinet if they'd like us to, or run what is, now known as independent or dark spending for our candidates, obviously in much smaller numbers than the other side. And a good example of that is actually most recently in the New York City mayoral race, where Zoran actually slightly outraised Cuomo. He raised $6 million to Cuomo's $5.5 million.
This is Zoran Mamdani, who was endorsed by Working Families Party. And I would actually love to learn more about the relationship between that candidate and the party, given that he seems to be currently, at least, that as far as we're talking in the moment that we're recording this conversation, he seems to be the highest profile independent politician with independent politics, progressive ideals in the nation, and has generated a lot of excitement. So you were saying that he, running for the Democratic nomination for New York City mayor, actually outraised Cuomo? Andrew Cuomo?
So Mamdani raised $6 million. Cuomo raised $5.5 million, which is pretty extraordinary for a candidate that many people hadn't heard of this time last year. But it just speaks to the excitement and enthusiasm that people had for his candidacy and what he stood for. That being said, Cuomo then raised, over $26 million in dark money to support him. Meanwhile, Mamdani, including WFP money, had $1.8 million on the independent side. And so that is some of our work, is that we're able to contribute some of that money to counter all of the millions that come in from billionaires to support their candidates. It's not as much, but we do our best to really try to counter some of that for our candidates. And long run, Working Families Party really wants to develop that people's PAC. So we are always recruiting members, in particular dues-paying members, to join California's PAC. So we ask people to consider giving $1, $10 a month to our PAC, and 100% of it goes to our candidates. There are 40 million Californians. I believe at least 1 million believe that we can have a government for the many and not the few. And even if 1 million gave us $1 a month, $1 million monthly PAC would win so many more progressive candidates into office up and down the ballot. And we really believe that we can do that. And by the way, the other side, the other PACs, whether it's the realtors, the police officers association, even the billionaire, business PACs, those are all dues-paying organizations. All of those members pay dues as well. We believe that we should be developing a people's PAC to help our folks forward. And we don't think that our candidates need as much to win.
So let's talk about the challenges that Working Families Party faces to achieve your goals, both physical challenges, cultural challenges, and legal challenges, because it sounds like dark money PACs are one of the biggest challenges that any effort faces that is trying to elect progressives or politicians with progressive platforms.
Money is a major factor in winning elections, but it's not the only factor. And we've seen that time and time again in races like Zohran Mamdani, who ran for New York City mayor and had significantly less dark money, independent money spending, but still won on a populist progressive agenda that spoke to young voters, multiracial working class, and frankly, just disaffected voters that want to see a government that's providing for everyone, not just some people, even if it includes them, right? Zohran Mamdani attracted higher net worth individuals who really believe that maybe there should be free buses. Maybe we should raise the minimum wage. Maybe we should, maybe the wealthy should be taxed at higher rates to contribute back to a healthy and safe society. And we certainly saw that with other candidates like AOC and other members that have run for Congress. There are far lesser known stories across the state of California of folks that have won similarly. And just in the first week of July, Working Families Party ran a candidate, Paloma Aguirre, who is the mayor of a small city in San Diego County called Imperial Beach, an unapologetic, fierce, progressive Latina. And she ran in a special election against a lot of better known moderate Democrats and Republicans. And she won that special election the first week of July in a county that historically had elected Republicans. In fact, this Board of Supervisors in 2020 had 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat. Democrats flipped it that year to 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. And now we have 3 Working Family Party Democrats and 2 Republicans. And we are so excited about what this progressive women majority will do in San Diego, on a county that is bordering, that's on the border.
Do you feel that the Democratic Party itself sometimes poses a challenge to the work of Working Families Party? Because so often you have Democrats that say one thing and do another. You have Democrats who join Republicans in passing horrendous legislation. You end up having often Democrats that take us into wars that nobody asked for. You know, the absolute sycophantic adherence to Israel and its genocide on Gaza seems to have been one major factor that sank Kamala Harris's candidacy, for example. Does the Democratic Party itself pose a big challenge?
Democratic Party poses a big challenge to itself. It is dying on the vine right now because it is not willing to change with the times or to represent the majority of Americans. And of course, there are individual Democrats, again, like Bernie Sanders and AOC and Elizabeth Warren, that are well known, that are bucking the establishment within their own party, but they are the minority. The Democratic Party isn't doing anything to help itself grow and actually stay with the times. We are seeing a system where both parties, the Republicans and Democrats, are captured by billionaire corporations. And both parties are abandoning the majority of working Americans. And that's why Working Families Party is such, I think, an important tool, and why I joined WFP is because I really believe that we need a multi-party system in order to break through the entrenched politics of today and actually build a government that will represent all of us and not just some of us.
Let's talk about culture and narrative. So much of our country's political alignments today are determined by cultural beliefs that are shaped by what people see in the media, what comes out of politicians' mouths, what Fox News is covering, or CNN or MSNBC are covering for that matter. So much of the battle that we engage in is fought on the cultural terrain. How does Working Families Party address the issue of narrative power? Do you have a narrative strategy? And if so, what is it? How do you achieve that?
So narrative and culture change is absolutely centered in our work because we are getting folks to take a leap of faith to invest in a vision that they may not have seen in their life. And so stories like Bernie Sanders and AOC and Zoran Mandani is part of imagining a very different political reality from what many folks have experienced their entire lives, and particularly young folks who are so disaffected by what they've seen. And just seeing not just the age of our leadership, but just who they are standing for and how just like how they have aligned themselves with the current realities of our economy is incredibly deflating and disappointing. So narrative work is a big part of what we are trying to do, because we are trying to reshape people's imagination about what politics can be and what government can be. And so it is really important to see candidates now run up and down the ballot, because we are seeing those candidates have huge impacts locally. And then, of course, the stories like the Bernies and the AOC and Mandani are encouraging young people to re-engage in politics. In fact, since the New York City primary win, thousands of people, thousands of young people have expressed an interest now in running for office. That is huge. I first ran for office in my mid-20s in the mid-2000s. And then it was an anomaly to see young people run for office. After Bernie Sanders' incredible primary run in 2016, I have seen hundreds of people of color, young people, people of color, LGBT folks, women, express an interest to run for office and win in California. That's pretty extraordinary. And we want to continue that. We're seeing that in places, again, like San Diego County, where a young candidate, Jimmy Figueroa, ran for city council in Oceanside and won this past November. And he now has led and passed the first rent control ordinance in the entire county of San Diego County in their history. This is the difference that candidates can make up and down the ballot. We now have 4 young people of color that ran against incumbents in LA City Council in 2020 and 2022, and they have won. And they're starting to make a difference by introducing ordinances like raising the minimum wage of hospitality workers to $30 an hour and winning. So these stories are already happening, but part of it is making sure that people are hearing about it both locally and nationally to, again, show folks what is possible. And I think California plays a really big role in that, because we are a fairly progressive and liberal state. This is a state where Bernie Sanders won, came in first place in 47 out of 53 congressional districts, not just in San Francisco and LA, but in the Central Valley and Inland Empire and San Diego and Northern California. So we have a fairly progressive electorate that believes in Medicare for all, tuition-free public college, and raising the minimum wage. So we should be electing candidates and an agenda that makes this a reality, and then showcase for the rest of the country what it means when we have a government that represents all of us and can pass this legislation, and the difference that it's making the lives in working Californians. So I think California has a particular role and responsibility in shaping that narrative and showing what is possible to the rest of the country.
Is there also a narrative battle around capitalism versus socialism, right? You have Zoran Mamdani openly and proudly embracing the label of democratic socialist. That's, of course, something that Bernie Sanders himself started. And the attacks against him might not necessarily focus on them from the GOP. When they do, they're usually filled with misinformation. But in a response video that he made to Donald Trump's attacks against him, threatening to deport and denaturalize him, he made the point that they are attacking him for his identity because they don't want to go after what he actually stands for, because probably the majority of people would love to see a municipal grocery store so they don't have to pay as much for groceries, would love to have free childcare and free buses. Is the narrative battle also one around how our economy functions and sort of undemonizing or taking on the demonization of socialism?
It's crazy and it's wild how much capital protects itself and how greedy capital is. The wealth concentration has grown so wildly in the last 50 years. The few people that are holding on to the majority of the capital in the world don't want to give up even $1,000, $2,000, $100,000 of it, when it would actually just make all of us healthier and safer. A country that has healthcare for all and free buses benefits everyone, including the rich, and it helps grow our economy. And so it almost feels counterintuitive to the level of which capital is fighting policies that just make sense to everybody else. And I thought it was really funny. There was, a joke headline about how Democrats are surprised that a left-wing candidate with left-wing policies appeal to left-wing voters. Of course, the majority of New Yorkers want to see a free bus program. Of course, the majority of New Yorkers want to raise the minimum wage. And of course, the majority of New Yorkers want to see greater protections for tenants, of which they are the majority. And so I believe Trump, the Republicans and established Democrats have to attack his identity because they know his policies are popular. I saw this myself again. I served on the school board and board of supervisors here in San Francisco. And I ran on a platform and I governed on a platform that was popular with most San Franciscans.
So it is certainly a battle of narrative as well. So put the work of Working Families Party in the broader context of social justice. There are a lot of people who maybe justifiably have gotten very apathetic about the electoral system. There used to be this sense that change happens in the streets, not in Congress. And yet, of course, it's Congress that shapes legislation. It's the president that gets to appoint Supreme Court justices and the Senate that gets to confirm them. And then it's the Supreme Court that gets to set precedent. The halls of power do shape our lives on a day-to-day basis in such clear ways. But how do you make the case that the work of Working Families Party fits within the broader universe of social justice?
Like, we have a two-party system that is currently pro-war, pro-billionaire, pro-corporation, and both anti-working people. We deserve a party that is anti-war, anti-billionaires, and pro-working Americans, which is the majority of us. Government is an important piece of that change. Yes, change does come from the streets, and we have to continue to do that. But we have to be running a multi-pronged strategy because government does matter. And, as someone who used to do direct services, as someone who used to be a youth organizer, I got to see the difference that I was able to make on the streets and in the community. I was able to help transform the lives of individuals and individual families. But when I was elected to the school board and when I was on the board of supervisor, I was able to make change at a scale that only government can do. Making San Francisco the only city to make community college tuition free for all of our residents, regardless of age, income, was an extraordinary thing that really only government can do. And we should want that power. I think on the left, we are often cynical or nervous about holding power, but holding power is important for a community. In fact, when I ran and when I won, even though I was constantly reminded about my age, my racial identity, my gender, and how that should make me less powerful than my white male colleagues, I still held the same power via our city charter that white male elected leaders have held for decades in our country. And I exercised that power. So many people fought for someone like me to be able to run for office and then serve. And so again, we often view government as a problem, and yes, it is. But I think we really need to transform that perspective and look at government as a prize that we should win.
What do you need from people? What do you need from progressives who, really want to see an end to the two-party stranglehold of our political system, to our viewers who might just from listening to this conversation be feeling more energized, or watching someone like Zohran Mamdani win, feeling more energized? Explain how they can plug in to the work that Working Families Party is doing in California, but also wider. This program is heard all over the country.
Well, one, believe and take a leap of faith, because if people didn't believe in Zohran Mamdani, he would not have won that election. If people thought it was going to go the way it's always gone in our history, that the institutional candidate that has been around really for 50 years via his father and himself is always going to win, then people would have stayed at home, they wouldn't have door knocked, they wouldn't have contributed, and they wouldn't have come out in the massive, unprecedented numbers that they did to win that election. We can win. Our numbers, the math shows that. We outnumber the billionaires, right? We should be winning every single election. and we can, but we have to believe in it and we have to come out and invest in it. So one, I would say, join Working Families Party. Give us a try. And when I say join us, I don't mean just follow our leadership. Actually join our leadership. We just had a member rep election where dues-paying members run to serve on our steering committee to make decisions on endorsements and strategy and where we go. It's not a decision that like the director alone makes or a group of leaders make. We actually want to bring members into the fold to help guide where this party goes. And it was an extraordinary turnout. More people invested in becoming dues-paying members. And we had super competitive races. At Los Angeles County alone, 22 people ran for 8 seats. And that just speaks to the engagement and excitement people, I think, have to see a new party come in that actually represents working Americans. To invest in us, consider giving us $1 a month, and 100% of your dollars will go to electing candidates from San Diego to Sacramento, from school board to state legislature. And that's going to give them the power to fight back the millions that are coming for them, because they're not going to represent just corporations. They're going to represent all of us. And 3, think about running for office. Think about starting mutual aid in your community, because that also makes a difference. We're so isolated. Bringing more connection to community will get people to see what they can do together. So I think there are multiple ways to engage. But most importantly, check us out. Give us a chance.
Give out a website, Jane?
Yes, workingfamilies.org. You can also check us out on Instagram at California Working Families Party.
I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Jane. Really appreciate you and the work that you're doing.
Thank you for having me.
My guest has been Jane Kim from Working Families Party. Jane is the California director of the Working Families Party, a longtime community organizer and progressive policymaker. Jane previously served as the California political director for Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign and was elected to 2 terms on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. This is Rising Up for Justice, and I'm Sonali Kolhatkar, host and executive producer of this new weekly half-hour series exclusive to viewers of Free Speech TV and subscribers of my long-standing program Rising Up with Sonali. You can find out more at risingupwithsonali.com.